boys and girls, it's Miss Cross here with you for math today, and we are continuing working on our learning target that says I can use place value to round whole numbers to any place using tools like number lines and anchor charts. And we've been working on number lines as tools the last couple of days. Today I'm going to show you an anchor chart that you can use to help you as a different tool. But first, we are going to do our activating strategy of estimation 180. Remember that your teacher can pause the video, open up estimation 180, take your estimates that are way too high, your estimates that are way too low, and then figure out the estimates that you think are correct. Okay, so do that, and I'll see you back in just a minute. Okay, boys and girls, I am going to teach you how to use a chart that has some kind of rounding rules on it. Now, I have put a picture here. It is also going to be available for your teacher to upload onto your e-class page. You could print it out. You could copy it into your journal. Whatever works for you. I'm going to flip over to the Ladybug so I can talk through it with you, okay? So, if we were here in school, I would have a big giant version of this up on the wall for us to refer to as we work, and we'll have that when you guys get here. But for now, you can find a version on your e-class page that you can print out or copy into your journal to use as a tool with rounding, okay? So we are not using a number line today. We're going to use some rules, okay? So the first thing you're going to do is find the place you're rounding to. So you could be rounding to the nearest 100, the nearest 1,000, the nearest 10,000, or the nearest 100,000. So whatever number you're looking at, you're going to find the place you're rounding to and underline that place, okay? So, for example, we're going to use this number, 2,374, rounded to the nearest 1,000. So you can see that I have underlined the thousands place, okay? Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to look next door one place over. So from the place we're rounding to, which is the thousands in this example, we're going to hop over to our hundreds. So I have drawn the little arrow and circled because this digit that's next door to the place we're rounding to is the one that's going to tell us whether we round up to the next 1,000 or down to this 1,000, okay? So I've underlined the place we're rounding to. I'm looking next door. Now, what does that number tell me? Okay, if the digit next door is 5 or more, so that could be 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, you're going to add one more to the place you're rounding to, okay? So if this digit is 5 or more, we're going to add one more to our thousands place. Now, if the digit next door is 4 or less, we're going to let it rest, which in other words means stays the same. So if the digit next door is a 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0, this number stays the same. We have a 3 next door. A 3 is 4 or less, so that too stays the same. What that means is we are rounding down. It's closer to the 1,000 below it than the 1,000 above it. So the next 1,000 up would be 3,000. The 1,000 below would be 2,000. So we can tell that 2,374 is closer to 2,000 than 3,000. Now, a couple more things with this chart. Numbers in front stay the same. So anything in front of what you're rounding does not change. So if we had a 10 or 100,000 here and we were rounding to the 1,000, those numbers on the left of the place we're rounding to would not change. Now, the numbers behind the place that we're rounding to turn to 0. So anything after the place we're rounding to is going to have a 0. So for instance, when we round this to the nearest 1,000, it would become 2,000. Okay, so all of these zeros come behind the place that we rounded to. Okay, I am going to work through a few examples with you, and I'm going to keep this chart nearby to help us, okay? So I feel like my pen is done. So you notice I do not have number lines drawn today because we are not using them today. Now, you might prefer to use a number line, and that is fine, but you do need to know this way to how to do it also, okay? So I am going to round this number, 214,634, to the nearest 1,000, the nearest 10,000, and the nearest 100,000. So I'm going to write it here for my first rounding, which is to the nearest 1,000. Now, if you remember from my chart, the first thing I do is find the place I'm rounding to and underline it. So I have a 4 in my thousands place in this number. Now, to decide what to do with that 4, whether it stays a 4 or goes up to 5, I have to go next door one place to my hundreds. Okay? Now remember, if this number is 5 or more, I have to add one more 1,000 to this number. If this number is 4 or less, I let it rest and it stays 6 here. And I know that 6 falls into the 5 or more category, so that means I have to add one more. So this is going to round up to 215,000. So these numbers in front of the place I rounded to stayed the same. All the numbers back here turned into 0. So this is telling us that 214,634 rounded to the nearest 1,000 is closer to 215,000 than 214,000. Okay? And if you wanted to check yourself with a number line, that would be a good idea as well. Okay, so let's try it again. Rounded to the nearest 10,000. So I'm going to underline my 10,000. And now I have to decide, is this number closest to, I'm going to write the numbers, the choices. I maybe should have done that before. So the 10,000s that are closest to this number are 210,000 or 211,000. So I have to decide whether or not this number is closer to 210,000 or closer to 211. So if you remember, I'm going to go to the digit next door. We have a 4 here. So now, 4 or less, let it rest. I'm going to keep this number the same. This is closer to that 10,000 than this one. Okay, 214,634 rounded to the nearest 1,000 is 210,000. It is a shorter distance from this number to 210,000 than 211,000. All right, one more example for you. 214,634. We're using the same number. We are rounding to the 100,000 this time, so I'm going to underline that place and I'm going to go next door. And I'm going to use this digit to tell me if this number is closer to 200,000 or 300,000. So I see a 1 next door, which falls into the 4 or less, so I'm going to let it rest. This is going to round down to 200,000. So you see when we rounded up to the next 1,000, 10,000 and 100,000, it both rounded down to the nearest 10,000 and 100,000. We're going to continue practicing this. If you are unsure of your work today using these rules, go ahead and draw your number lines as well. But we would like you to try using this chart first. Okay? And we are here to help you. If you need any help, if you are confused, let us know so that we can help you. Today, let me scroll back over here. Okay, that's what I just did. Your practice you're going to do a practice sheet called Rounding to the Nearest 1,000 that your teacher will give you. Remember to use the chart or number lines as a second tool, but we really want you to practice the rules on the chart first. Okay, so today we learned how to use a chart as a tool to help us when we are rounding. Remember, when we're using this chart, find the place you are rounding to and then look at the digit next door to decide whether to round up or round down. And here's a little rounding humor for you today. The dog says, "That's all 40 sheep." And the man says, "What? We should only have 37." And he says, "I know, I rounded them up." So I hope you enjoy a little rounding humor for today, boys and girls. Have a great day.